Welcome, deep divers. Today, we're diving into an incredibly rich ancient text, Deuteronomy 29, specifically verses 13 through 21. We're talking about a covenant here, a really solemn, binding agreement. It's got promises, sure, but also responsibilities.
Right.
And what's surprising is how it connects to self-deception and, well, some big historical lessons that still feel relevant.
Yeah, they really do.
So our mission today is to unpack what this ancient wisdom tells us about maybe enduring human nature and these timeless promises.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how this message, even though it was written down thousands of years ago, it gets its deepest meaning from stuff that happened later, historically speaking.
Right, after it was written.
Yeah. So we're going to try and give you a bit of a shortcut, maybe, to understanding how these covenants work out in reality. And it reveals something quite universal about, well, the danger of false peace, how easily we fool ourselves.
Okay, so let's get into it then.
Yeah.
This covenant in Deuteronomy 29, it happens in Moab. But what's really striking, like you said, isn't just for the folks standing right there.
No.
The text, verses 14 and 15, it explicitly says it's for those not here today.
Which is huge.
Yeah. It stretches this whole thing across generations.
Yeah.
It's foundational for a whole lineage.
Exactly. And this covenant, it promised them a huge territory, vast lands.
But history tells a slightly different story, doesn't it?
It does. For centuries, Israel really struggled to possess all that land. It's kind of a powerful picture, that gap between God's promise and, human reality.
A constant tension.
Yeah, reflecting their own internal issues, too.
And you see this tension really explode later when the kingdom, after being fairly strong for a bit, it just fractures.
Right, into northern Israel and southern Judah.
And the northern Israel, they eventually get wiped out by the Assyrians, 722 BCE. A devastating defeat.
A really stark historical lesson right there.
Absolutely. And suddenly, this Old Covenant text from Deuteronomy 29, it wasn't just history. Its warnings became, intensely relevant for southern Judah, for their actual survival.
Yeah.
It forced them to look hard at their own choices.
And this whole historical backdrop, it makes the warnings inside the covenant even more chilling. It shows these universal truths about how easily we kid ourselves. I mean, even when the evidence is right there.
Yeah.
Deuteronomy 29.1, it warns about this root of poisonous weed and wormwood growing within the community.
Not outside, but inside.
Exactly. Individuals whose hearts were just subtly turning away. And what's really sneaky is this idea of false peace in verse 19.
Okay, tell us about that.
Well, these were people who heard the warnings, clear warnings of judgment, but inside they were thinking, sort of rationalizing, I'll be safe, even if my stubborn heart leads to disaster for the wet and the dry.
The wet and the dry. Okay, that's a really interesting phrase. An idiom, right? What's that about?
It's absolutely key. It's a Hebrew idiom, and it basically means everything, without exception, the whole lot.
Everything. Okay.
So for southern Judah listening to this, the dry was obviously northern Israel, already destroyed. Gone.
Right. The historical lesson.
Exactly. And the wet, that symbolized them. Still surviving. Still, alive.
Okay.
So the self-deception, the really profound arrogance was believing, look, even if the entire nation, both the destroyed north and us, the living south, faces judgment, I personally will still have peace.
Wow.
It's a timeless kind of blueprint for how we rationalize, isn't it? Convincing ourselves we're the exception to the rule, even today, exempt from consequences others face.
And the text is pretty clear about the consequences for that kind of thinking, that spiritual exceptionalism.
Oh, absolutely. God's judgment, verses 20 and 21, lay it out. Severe.
And tragically, it happened, didn't it? Southern Judah eventually fell too.
Yeah.
To Babylon, 587 BCE.
They became the dry tree themselves, the very thing they thought they were immune to.
Yeah.
But this cycle, this awful cycle of self-deception leading to disaster, playing out over centuries, it ultimately pointed towards something new, didn't it?
A need for a different way?
Exactly, a different kind of covenant. This whole history of failure, in a way, it paves the way for what believers understand as the new covenant in Jesus Christ. The idea being that he became the dry tree of curse, on the cross. He took those consequences.
So the believers could become
wet trees, trees of life. But, and this is crucial, even as wet trees, you still need constant rooting, connection to that life source.
through things like engaging with scripture, prayer.
Right. It means actively rejecting that same old false peace, that complacency. Staying connected is vital.
So thinking about all this, what really stands out to you? This danger of false security versus the need for well, constant connection to a real source of life.
I think it's that true peace, genuine vitality. It only comes from being honest, from that daily, conscious rooting in our true source, not from kidding ourselves or thinking I'm good enough or somehow immune. It really pushes us to ask, doesn't it? What roots are you actually relying on today for your sense of peace, your security? Where are you really planted?